There we go. Welcome everyone. ZDS 073. We've got Preston in the studio with us. Preston, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I got it. My diamond hands are going strong. For anyone joining in, Preston has a Deno course coming out soon, I believe. Getting started with Deno. Preston, I believe you're still in the process of editing and getting that all together, but I'm looking forward to checking it out once it's out, man. I've been super interested in Deno ever since I heard about it a while ago now, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, it's coming together pretty well. I finished editing earlier this week, just going through and doing making sure everything looks good, and then I'll get set up on a service to sell the course, and hopefully in the next week or two it should be released and out there and ready to go. So I'm excited
Awesome.
for it. It's been a few months in the making, so I'm excited for it.
Good deal, man. Yeah, I'll make sure. I saw you had a little mailing list link. I'll make sure to put that in the uh, text down below the video. So make sure you go check out that link and check it out for Preston here. So, dude, what's going on? What are you passionate about these days? I'm seeing all kinds of cool stuff all over your Twitter feed. What's going on?
Yeah, so lately I've been really into Angular and Tailwind, trying to
Yes.
get Tailwind into my applications and start using that. So that's been the thing I've been doing most recently. Um, but yeah, that's up there. I mean, most of the stuff that I tweet about, I have two Twitter accounts to separate like web dev because a lot of people that follow me on my other Twitter account are like family and friends who don't care about web development. So uh, yeah, so mostly on that account, it's web development, but mostly Angular and Tailwind has been pretty big lately. So that's what I've been into.
Nice, man. I feel you on the separation there. So I have just the one Twitter account, but I had been using Facebook as like stuff for family. And recently I've been posting more of my dev stuff onto Facebook. And I don't know, it's kind of like the two worlds colliding a little bit. It's interesting that way. But
Yeah, I post every now and then. Like if I publish a blog post, it goes to my Facebook page, and I'll have like a few people like the post, but I know like they're not going to read it because I mean, why would they? They're not going to understand anything. So like it's
yeah,
fine that they don't, but they like it, and it's like, oh, well, thank you, that's cool, but I know you're not going to read this, so I kind of keep it separate. My other Twitter account, if you want to follow it, it's mostly NBA stuff, the Utah Jazz, stuff like that.
I
So
saw I saw that in your in the what's it called, like the little profile picture up top, the banner of
yeah,
your
yep,
Twitter. So I'm afraid we're mortal enemies, Preston. Growing up in the '90s, I was all Michael Jordan and the Bulls. So
yeah,
Karl Malone and John Stockton, they were John Stockton was the devil for me, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, Michael Jordan was for all of us here in Utah too,
Yeah,
but yeah. So yeah, I spend most of my free time hanging out with my family and watching Jazz games. So that's what the other Twitter account's for, and then use the one for web development. So
cool, man. Yeah, I've been actually surprised. Like a lot of family have been reading more of my blogs recently since I've been posting them to Facebook. So I have been trying to do more like techie, but like bringing in their world a little bit. My last blog post was about like the everything going on with GameStop, just like an explanation of what's happening. So yeah, it's been cool to see them, get involved with it a little bit. See the
yeah, for
see
sure.
the worlds mixed. But yeah, so Tailwind, I saw you tweet about NG a little bit. Man, when I picked that up, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I first tried it out. We've just started a couple of new projects at work, and we've been using Bootstrap for a long time and customizing the Bootstrap builds and templates. And as you probably know, that's really difficult.
Yeah.
And so we were starting to look, and I did Chris Sevilleja's beginner Tailwind course recently. So I was like, I really want to use this in a project. So we started this new project, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I suggested it and kind of got the team on board. And so then I was like, all right, now I have to figure out how to use this with Angular because I didn't know how to do it. So I found another one, NGX Tailwind, and it works really
Hmm.
well too. I don't really have any complaints with it, but I thought I would just try NgNeat Tailwind. And the biggest difference from the user side is that when you do a prod build for your Angular app, it'll automatically purge the styles. But NGX Tailwind, you have to set the node env to production to purge the styles. And I didn't know that at first. So I built my application the first time um, with NGX Tailwind, and it was huge. And
Yeah.
I knew that was a thing because Chris says in his course, "Hey, make sure that you purge the style." So I knew that was like a thing, but I didn't know how to make it do that, and so I had to dig around and figure it out. So when I
Yeah.
tried NgNeat Tailwind last night, it just worked, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. It's so much easier to not have to worry about that, and it just builds for you." So I think that's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. I guess there's some nice under the hood things too that NgNeat does that are more beneficial too. But
Yeah, my big thing with NgNeat that I was super impressed by was, I always like to work in NX workspaces.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes those can get difficult because, things are just structured a little bit differently. And sometimes, so I wanted to put a project inside of like my big side project mono repo and just use Tailwind on this one thing. And that can be kind of hard sometimes,
Yeah,
depending on how the other schematics are set up. But seeing NgNeat like it had an option for NX, I was like, yes.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Do you use NX in your stuff
Oh
at
yeah,
work, personal? Okay,
yeah.
awesome.
We started um, again about 18 months ago. We started a project, and we knew that we were going to be sharing a lot of code. So I was like,
Nice.
hey, I think we really want to go this route so we can share that code nice and easy. So we've been using it here at work for about 18 months. And we just started another project, the first one we were going to do Tailwind on, and it was going to be in its own workspace. But I was like, I'm still setting this up with NX, even though it's the plan is to only have the one application in there. Like
Yeah.
just all the defaults that it comes with, using Jest, using Cypress, all that stuff. It's just so much easier, and I like how it's organized now with the libs and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, even though it's just the one project, I was like, yeah, we're going this route.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. Yeah, I do this a lot, and I know it's way overkill. But if I just want to do like a little node script, create NX workspace,
Yeah,
and like you get if I usually don't want to do any just tests or anything like that. But if I wanted to, it's just like one command away. Just like add
yeah.
the spec file and type it up, or you get the free TypeScript all set up for yourself with that. It's very nice. So
Yeah, it's way cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of NX.
awesome. Yeah, so doing like the NX office hours, it's always cool to hear people
Yeah,
like who hear what they're using it for and stuff like that. One thing I'm continuously surprised with is I feel like a lot of times NX gets used standalone, like for a single product, which I think not all that surprising. Like the big driver of NX, I think, is just the tool set you get with when you bring in NX with all the schematics and stuff like that. But I think like once you get into like code sharing, like you're explaining in your project at work, that's where it really, really, really shines. So
yeah. And like I know that you can convert a project to an NX workspace, but I kind of feel like um, even though you may not know if you'll need multiple apps or all the stuff that NX provides, if you, it still works for just a single project. So I'm kind of leaning towards just using it. And then if I need to add a new app later on, then I can. And it's just one command away instead of, okay, how do I convert this to an NX workspace and go through all these steps? I can just add it, you know, with one command. And so that's kind of like where I'm leaning towards is use
yeah,
it for everything. And if it's only got one app and it's kind of small, yeah, maybe it's a little overkill, but the tool set is still really nice. And then if I do need to add into it, then it'll be easy.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious now. Like when you build an app, The way I started when we first got our hands on NX, like back before I was at Narwhal, we were just like I was at the smaller company called Swamp Fox Inc. and we were just like one of the early adopters for NX, and felt like what I would do was like I followed this old axiom that's like once you've rewritten something twice, then go ahead and write something for it. So we do that. We'd like have most of our stuff living in our Angular app still, but once we noticed, oh, we're using this module in like a couple apps, and we're just like copy it and paste it. That's when we'd start like pushing it down into a shared lib. Which I'm curious, do you take that approach, or do you take a more deliberate approach to building out your libs?
So when we first started, I heard about monorepos. Victor gave a talk at NgConf. It was probably 2017, maybe 2018. I can't remember for sure, but he talked about monorepos, and I'd guess it was probably 2018 when I heard him talk about it. And I liked the idea of it, but so I kind of had that in my mind. And then we were starting this project in kind of late 2019-ish. And so I knew it was coming up and that we were going to want to share that code. So I got the book from Narwhal that was about monorepos.
Yeah.
And I read through that book. And so when I started, I kind of had that idea in my mind of just put basically every feature module just became a library. And so I started that way. So there's a little bit of stuff in the app component and app module just to kind of set up things, but pretty much everything's in libs. And so it's been much more just put everything in its own library. And then recently we added a new application to our workspace that we were gonna things that were in one domain. And at the time when we put them there, they were only going to belong to that one domain. And then they were like, oh, hey, we want to build this. We want to kind of spin this one part of the app into its own standalone application, but we want to share it with this old one too. And so I used that NX move command that's in there. And that was a lifesaver because it took like, I don't know, 10 minutes. I ran NX move on like 3 different libraries, and then they were in the shared domain, and it just worked. So, it was incredible. So it saved a ton of time.
Yeah, when Johanna she built that for us I think it was like the first week she came on the team. The first week they hired her, and that's been such a lifesaver so many times. I've wished for a long time something like that exists.
Yeah,
and it's incredible to me how well it works. Like it'll update all the imports and all that kind of stuff for you. Very impressive.
Yeah. The other cool thing, I don't know how this worked, but while I was doing that, somebody else was making a change, and they happened to change one of those modules that something in one of those modules that I moved. But when I merged the main branch into my feature branch, it updated the shared module. Like it knew that it moved and it updated the correct file, because I was like prepared to manually do that, and it just worked. And I was like, oh, this is it just worked.
I think we have to thank Linus Torvalds for that, because I'm pretty sure that's a get diffing, but
it was incredible. I was surprised. I just didn't think that. I was like, I moved it to a completely different section. I thought I was going to have to do it, but it just worked. So it was nice.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive how well that kind of stuff works.
Yeah,
but yeah. So the book you mentioned, I was joining on at Narwhal right when we released that book. That was back when Nitin was still with us, and he authored it. And I remember pouring through that book when I first joined Narwhal, because I wanted to like give people all the right advice. And so that's when I kind of first got into that idea. So you had like the different kind of categories of libs you could have, like your feature module, your data access module, presentational modules, and there's a fourth one. I think it's just utils. Yeah. That was the fourth one. So I don't know. I messed with that a little bit, and I think that's when I got into the mindset of really being deliberate about libs. Like before, we had always been like very conscious about them, but it was always from a mindset of, okay, once we're using things double, that's when we'll start pushing things down. And we were in such a connected thing. We were doing, custom solutions. So it was like a new company would buy something from a new custom solution. We'd literally make a new app inside the monorepo and just like build it out. The goal was always to get to a point where we're just like picking libs off the shelf and like putting them all in and then wrapping it up and shipping it. So like literally building an app in an afternoon kind of deal. But yeah, we got pretty close to that. No, there was one app we got out in like a week. It still needed some custom stuff, but yeah, it was really cool to do that. And moving over to Nitin's model though of just having the like just being more deliberate about it. I think that absolutely helped in terms of just like thinking about the project more modular from the beginning and
Yeah.
trying to construct that web. So I don't know. Do you feel like you do that a lot? We would always like pull down the depth graph and just look at it and see like, is this right? Almost, So
Yeah, ours was pretty straightforward. So I work for a health insurance company, and
okay,
so we our apps are in there are one for like members to log in and see information about their policy, and then there's one for the employers that they can go in and see information that they need and add people to a new policy and stuff like that.
yeah,
Those are pretty separate. But then we do have a couple things that are related for members. Like they wanted to be able to, we wanted them to be able to search for doctors, for example, directly from the application, but also to go to a separate URL if they wanted to. And so that was kind of the idea behind the workspace and saying, okay, well, if we do that, then if we do this in a workspace, then we can build that code one time and we can deploy it in both spots. And so like the domains are pretty easy to separate and pretty intuitive to
yeah.
separate. So
Well,
so
can I latch onto something you just said, which
yeah.
was like deploy in one spot? Are you going with like a micro front end approach where you actually like are you using iframes to point to the one like domain for these like a micro app or
No, so
okay,
we'll like our one is member.motivehealth.com, and then the other one will be like search.motivehealth.com.
okay,
And so they'll be deployed to two different domains, but that's
okay,
just like it's just in a shared. All those modules are just in the shared domain, and so it's pulled into the member app or the search app.
got it, okay.
Yeah,
I was gonna be really impressed if you were like figured out a way to like properly lick the micro front end thing or something like that. But yeah,
um,
I think the way you're describing works exceptionally well. If you're just consign yourself to stay in Angular world, we're gonna live in the framework. NX works really well for that. I feel
yeah.
like so. Yeah. Very cool. Well, we started talking about Tailwind and we got into NX monorepos.
Yeah.
let's try to circle back into Tailwind. What is it about Tailwind that gets you excited?
So I think the biggest thing, so I really jumped into Bootstrap 5, 6, 7 years ago when I first got into web development because I'm not a designer and
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing in that area.
I feel you so much in that statement
Yeah,
right now.
like to the point where I graduated high school and I served a mission for my church. I came back. I was getting ready to start college, and I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And
hmm
a friend of my dad's was like, "Hey, you should get into web development." And I was like maybe that might be cool, but like I don't know how to come up with ideas or designs. Like I don't know how to do that, so I don't think I'd be good at that. Um, and then he finally convinced me to try it, and I realized like you don't have to be a designer to be a developer. They're so different. So that whole section, like it just doesn't make sense to me how you can think of a site out of thin air and just design it. So I jumped into Bootstrap and I'd used it a lot and found a lot of templates and stuff like that. But anytime I wanted to make even the simplest change, it was so hard to overwrite the styles. So so we had this app that we built. It was designed and developed on top of Bootstrap, and we sent it out to an outside company that customized the Bootstrap for us, and we got like the styles back, and they did a good job, but like, it was really difficult to try to overwrite those styles. And so now anytime we add a new feature to that, it's like we don't really want to send out just one page, because to send out one page doesn't really make sense. So we're like trying to say, okay, well, how do we pull in these parts and make them look good and everything? And it's kind of a pain. But Tailwind, because you don't have to overwrite anything really. You just choose the styles that you want. The fact that you can just build custom sites just by throwing a whole bunch of utilities together, that's really cool. You don't go onto a site and say, oh, this is bootstrapped because I know that button, that's a bootstrap button. You don't do that with Tailwind because you can make your buttons look however you want. And so I like that idea. It's not like you don't have to look at the designer and say, well, because we're using Bootstrap, it's not really going to look like that. It's going to look like this because that's what Bootstrap looks like. Yeah. I like that freedom, and then it's also, I think, really pretty approachable. So our designer, he's dabbled a little bit in front end web development, and so he'll design it in, I think he uses XD, and he gets approvals through that and stuff, and then he ends up either manually, or I don't know if he has an automated process, but he ends up creating the HTML for us with all the classes and just sends it to us. And then we're not arguing over like, oh, hey, this gray is a little bit different, or I put a 2-pixel border on there and you have a 4-pixel or anything like that. It's just, he gives us the classes and it just looks correct. And so I like that it seems to be a more simple workflow with Tailwind. And so it's just it's been really cool. I've been really excited about it.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, it's so interesting seeing the similarities between our experiences. So I actually had a almost identical like story. Working at Swamp Fox, I had a friend, and it felt like our skill sets were like puzzle pieces to each other, right? Like I could do all the JavaScript stuff and all the Angular stuff, and I couldn't get my mind around. Like I could kind of figure out CSS, but it was like staring at a wall for hours and being like, hoping things came together. But he was just like perfect about that. And we had a similar workflow to what you're describing. He would just like build out, we call them wireframes, and he just used like just the smallest amount of jQuery that he had learned to like get something semi-working with like mock data and stuff like that. And we take that and then like flesh it out was kind of the idea. And it made for this really cool workflow, like in general. Like I'm surprised more people don't do this, where you just have like the designer handing off HTML and CSS to developers, and then developers just taking that and like, I don't know, fleshing it out. And like you said, you get into this situation where, well, if you got some situation where something's not looking quite right, or there's extra elements in the DOM because Angular's like Angular, like you could just kind of like resolve that together by him sending some new spreadsheet or some new style sheet rather, and it's kind of cool. But it made this weird thing for me where in my side projects I was like paralyzed. I felt like, because I was like, I'm not as good as him. It would be futile for me to try to design something that's going to look halfway decent. That will take up all my time, and I'll just be kind of, left holding the bag, kind of like, oh, I got to figure out all the CSS stuff now. And for me, Tailwind completely freed me up in that. It was like, it was like I went from feeling paralyzed, like I couldn't do anything, to being like, okay, let me grab just the basic components out of Tailwind and slap it together. And I felt like my friend was there, like giving me these styles, but it wasn't. And somehow everything works well together. It's black magic or something, man, or dark magic. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've done my last job before I moved here. I've been at this company for just over 5 years. The last company, we kind of did, well, it was kind of, I guess, similar to that where, but we would have designers design. It was a digital marketing agency, and they'd send us the design to my team. There's 3 or 4 of us, and we would write completely custom HTML and CSS to match the design. So I got
Okay.
really
So
good at,
when you say they gave you the design, like an image was what they said. Is
like,
that
yeah, like the Photoshop files.
okay?
So they'd send us the Photoshop files of a design, and then we would take that and completely custom build all the HTML and CSS, and
Hmm.
then all the JavaScript needed to make a drop down or custom menu or whatever, and then it would go from us to the to another team that would put it in Adobe Experience Manager or WordPress, and they would handle all that, and we just build the templates and stuff. So it was kind of challenging and fun, and I got really used to CSS, and I got, pretty comfortable with it. But now it's been a long time since I did that, and so writing custom CSS, it takes me a lot longer now. So it's nice to not have to do that. To go to, I just, in the chat, I just put this site that I just found on dev.to recently. It's called tailwindkit.com, tailwind-kit.com. And so if you're using Tailwind, you should totally go check this out. I was just looking at it. They have there's a whole bunch of components and templates that are just all for free, that you can copy the code that you need, the HTML and all the classes. So they have buttons and badges and avatars and menus and forms and all this stuff. And so I just found this, and I was like, oh, this is really nice, because I hadn't found a ton of stuff like this. There'd
Yeah.
been some, but this one is the biggest that I found so far, with all the stuff in one spot. It says over 250 free components and templates. So it's really cool. So it's nice, like you said, to just be able to go in to something like this site and find the tailwind and just grab it and put it in. And you might have to change some stuff to make it work with Angular, but that usually is pretty minor, and then it just works,
Yeah.
and your site looks good, and you look like a designer and everything. So
Yeah, I feel like such a fraud. So I use Tailwind for my personal site, and I'm like, this has no business looking as good as it
Mhm.
does. Like I'm the guy on the team that's like, oh, we can tell who did this wireframe because they obviously didn't put any effort into the styles. So that's
Yep.
why they solid bones, but like
Yep.
it doesn't look good. So yeah, that's my thing. I'll make sure we get the Tailwind kit link inside the comments down below as well. So awesome, dude. Yeah. Moving on from Tailwind a little bit. Another big thing I saw going on your Twitter feed, the NgChampions stuff that they're working on with NgConf. So as far as I can tell, it's like they're doing an initiative where they're like getting folks around the community to write to the NgConf blog. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so I don't know how many people there are now. There's probably about 15 people that are NgChampions, is what they call them. But yeah, we just write blog posts and publish them to the NgConf Medium blog.
Okay.
And so we'll write a blog post and submit it and to the publication, and then 1 or 2 people will review it and give a little bit
Awesome.
of feedback, and then we publish them. So yeah, so I started, I think last September is when I was contacted about joining, and just started writing. And I've been writing on my personal blog for a while.
Yeah.
Someone a long time ago told me, hey, like when you learn something new, just write it down and make a little personal blog site that you can kind of practice stuff on, and you can put your blog post there. They said probably nobody will read it, but that's fine, because you'll be able to go back and refer to it. And so yeah, I started on GitHub Pages. I used Jekyll for a long time with GitHub Pages, and like I started that probably like in 2012 or 13, right around there. And
Yeah.
then just like at the very end of 2019 or 2020, like 2 months ago, maybe, I moved to Scully, and I moved my site over to to Angular and Scully. So so I've been writing there for a long time, and then I just started on NgConf, and it's been fun. Just I pretty much write down stuff that I did at work that day. I'm like, okay, I just figured out how to do this thing. Let me hurry and write it down so that I can remember the next time I
Yeah.
come back, but also so that I can submit it to the NgConf blog. So it's been fun.
Very cool. Do you like double post to your personal blog and to NgConf as well?
Yeah, so usually Brooke Avery kind of manages that for us. So once she publishes the post, usually
Hmm.
about a week later, I'll publish it to my blog as well,
Okay.
uh, just so that it's in both spots. And then I'll usually use most of my posts. I also will then put on dev.to as well.
Yeah.
So they're in a few different spots. But
That's where I put my posts right now is dev.to. I want to, so I've been working on my personal side. I originally wanted to do like the full Scully thing with like hosting my own blogs. And I got to a point I was just like, I'm just going to link to dev.to
yeah,
to like YouTube. Like had all this ideas for like embedding YouTube videos inside the site and all that stuff. But at least I've got something out. I've always kind of wanted to have a portfolio site. Now I feel like I've kind of got one, even if it's
yeah,
just like a site of links. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
happy with that.
If I had like if dev.to had been a bigger thing when I first started, I probably would have started there
Yeah.
because I love it. It's great. But since I already like had everything set up, like I'll just post it on mine and then cross post it. For a long time, I was cross posting to Medium as well before
Yeah.
I started writing for the NgConf blog, but I didn't get like a lot of traffic there, and so I just figured I get most of the traffic even now. Well, with the NgConf blog posts, I do get a lot more traffic on Medium, but I was getting like a decent amount just on my personal site and not that much on even dev.to or Medium. So I kind of stopped putting them on Medium, but I still put
Hmm.
them on dev.to. It's a really nice platform.
Yeah.
But it's fun to like it was I moved to Scully mostly just to like learn how to do it because my Jekyll setup worked great. Like I didn't really need to do anything different. It
Yeah.
worked fine. But I was like, I want to learn how to do this, and it's nice to just write in Angular like I do every day for work, and just to have it work. It's really comfortable and really nice.
Yeah. And not to put down Scully in any way, but originally I was intent on doing like a Scully implementation. But I wanted to like do some kind of fun stuff with the site too, like allow users to log in and like clap and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and figuring out like just some of the basic stuff, like getting stuff hooked up with Firebase, and then but also Scully at the same time was just like too much. I had to pull out of Scully for a bit there, and we'll see
yeah,
at some future point when I start hosting them on my own, hosting the blogs on my own site. I think I'll probably want to bring Scully back in and
yeah.
just figure it out. But it's hard right now. It seems like so.
It's really it's not too bad. Like they have really good support for like generating a blog, and if you're especially if you're doing sites that have a lot of static content that don't need people to be logged in to generate and stuff, then
Yeah.
it's really pretty straightforward. I have not done anything where you like have to deal with people that need to log in or anything like that with Scully. But I know that those are things that are like on the roadmap and on their minds of how do we make this better. Like I think, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure. I don't sit in on the meetings or anything, but I think what they would love is for because I believe that NG Universal is more like it's really it can be used for people that log in and stuff like that if I
Yeah.
understand that correctly. And so I think what they would like it for Scully is to be able to do what NG Universal does, but also to generate static sites like it does now, and to be
Yeah.
able to do both of them. And so I think that's kind of like their ultimate goal would be to be able to do that and to make it super easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I've heard from other people that have tried to have parts of the site that need to be generated after you log in that it can be a little bit tough. I just haven't tried that stuff yet.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident in Aaron and the team over there being able to figure out that solution with enough time. But
Yeah,
it's a hard problem, man. Like
yeah,
SEO and SSR and all this stuff that's difficult stuff. And
yeah,
props to them for coming up with such a good solution already in Scully. But like getting hitting all those all these weird edge cases,
yeah.
I'm sure that just takes time. So
Yep, for sure.
hopefully I'll just like I'll just give them enough time, and then they'll have an amazing solution. I'll just be able to pull that down off the shelf.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hoping for. But
yeah,
yeah, the other thing I really wanted to bring out from this is I've been feeling. I wonder if you have this too, because I've definitely noticed, your blog posts floating around, different stuff of you engaging with the community in general. This is the first time we're talking, obviously, but I feel like there's like there's something interesting going on right now. I feel like, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's this interesting piece of like community as entertainment that's kind of like I feel like this is what the internet always should have been. And I feel like at least in our little bubble, in our little community, it's really starting to get realized. Where we have like all these people doing like the different kinds of Angular shows or web dev shows of any kind, and seeing it like uh, from what I can tell, there's some channels out there that have like big followings and big numbers, but in some ways it's like this interesting like social thing where a lot of us are just going around and like, hey, it's COVID, let's do something. Like let's talk about stuff since we can't like hang out in person.
yeah,
And so we got this thing where there's a lot of content out there, not too many views on any one thing, but it's like people will make connections from that, and then you end up going on other people's shows and other people's stuff like that. So I don't know if you've had any if that's your perception too, or if that curious about your perspective on
yeah.
that thought.
So I think that so I don't want to make it sound like COVID and this whole pandemic has been good, but I think that I don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. I think that there will be some good things that come out of this that we're going to learn from it, and I think one of those is that like you said, we can interact with people from all over the world, and we don't only have to do things in person like at conferences. I hope that in-person conferences come back relatively soon. I love going to NgConf and getting to talk to people and meet people there in person at NgConf. But I think like this type of stuff is really cool too, where I'm here with you today. A couple months ago, I got on with Bram on his live stream and talked about GitHub Actions and NX. And
Nice.
in November, I was able to present at the Angular Utah meetup. And so, like, especially for at least for me, like I have 4 kids at home and my wife, and we have a lot of stuff that we do. And so it's hard for me to even like my wife would say yes, she's incredible, but I don't want to even ask her like, hey, the Angular meetup is tonight in Salt Lake. And so if I go there, it's about a 40-minute drive, and then I'll be there for 2 hours and then a 40-minute drive home. I know you've been home with the kids all day, but can you do it all night too? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to do that to her. But to be able to say, hey, I'm going to do this tonight, but I'm just going to sneak downstairs for an hour and a half or something like that. Can is that okay? Or I'm going to do this during my lunch break, like today or whatever.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier for people to be able to get together and to meet each other and to share ideas. And if even if only a couple people view each one, maybe it'll be one that will help them for their job or to get into development or whatever. So I think that it's really cool. I like seeing all the things pop up, the Discord server that popped up for the Angular community, like those type of things. I think are just super helpful to be able to bounce ideas off people and to learn and to find other people. I don't have that many people in my personal life that are interested in web development in Angular. And so to be able to find people who are and be able to talk to them and to not have their eyes glaze over when you talk to them about it, it's really
man, it's all
cool.
about those change detection cycles, man. You don't even
Yeah.
I feel you there. I feel you on the dad life stuff as well. I feel like I feel like COVID's like my time because now, like when you're not expected to be there in person, it's like you said, you can just like jump into the office and close the door for a little bit, and
Yeah.
so that's a lot easier. That's a lot easier pill to swallow than, hey, I'm going to be gone like
Yeah.
all night. So
Yep.
yeah. I've got 6 kids, so
Oh, nice.
I got you beat by 2 for
Yep.
now.
Probably forever. So
Okay, good. Good. Yeah, we're done. But yeah, cool, man. And let's see. I wanted to ask you about the stigma of touching your mouse.
Oh. Yeah. So I owe that to Wes Boss.
Okay.
When I got my first real job out of college, I was at that digital marketing agency, and I was using Sublime Text, and they bought a few of us on the team a copy of his Sublime Text Power User book, I think is what it was called. And so I would go through that for an hour or so each day for a week or so. And he talked a lot in there about not reaching for your mouse and using it. And so I focused on that. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn these keyboard shortcuts. And so I like not moving my hand off the keyboard and just using keyboard shortcuts and stuff. I still use my mouse a decent amount throughout the day, but it seems like a small thing, like what, it's just right there. How can it take that much longer? But I do notice, like if I get into the zone and I don't have to move my hand back and forth, and I just use my keyboard, I do get a lot faster. So if you want to use your mouse, that's great. You can, people can do what they want, but I do like just keeping my hand right there on the keyboard and tapping away.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Yeah, so when I first got started, like this is my first thing into being like, maybe I want to do programming. A friend of mine was really big. He was in BI, so business intelligence kind of work. He was really big into Python, which makes sense for that kind of work. And so he recommended Python the Hard Way as like my book to learn. And it was all like, there's a surprising amount about how it's all about how you type, and like you gotta get used to it because typing code is a little different because you gotta hit those semicolons and the white space and all that kind of stuff a lot. And I was just like, okay, this is what programming's all about, is the keystrokes. And now it's just I use the mouse all the time. I don't even think about it. Like I think to me it seems like the big thing is if there's friction between you and what you're trying to get on the screen, then yes, there's like some bit of a problem there. But aside from that, like this should be the bottleneck, like not your fingers, Yeah. So
yeah, for sure. Like, and I'll use my I will use my mouse in VS Code. Most of the time in VS Code, I don't really, a lot of this stuff I don't need to, because I'll just, like hit Command P to open up the file.
Command P is so nice.
Yeah, so nice. But there are times where like I can't remember where the file is. Yep. And so Command P does me no good. So then I'll reach for my mouse, and like I think you can traverse the file tree and stuff without it, but I don't want to learn how to do that. So yeah. And I use it everywhere else on my computer, but in VS Code, I've gotten pretty trained to just using the keyboard when I'm in a file and I'm editing that file.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I know. So the shortcuts I know in VS Code are all the big ones are like the dual cursor one, right? Like that one can come in super handy in some cases. The other ones I know are like closing the two drawers, the one up to the side and the one below. And I don't know, like once you open the terminal drawer below, I don't know actually how to switch to that. I feel like that could save me some interaction with the mouse. But
yeah, so I just learned this because I wanted to figure it out for my course so that I didn't have to keep bringing the mouse cursor onto the stuff. But
Oh man,
so
filming screen shares is like paralyzing in that way a little
I
bit,
know,
right?
yeah. So I didn't want to have the mouse going everywhere, and it's
Yeah.
hard because like I recorded it on a on 1280 by 720, so like getting the mouse just on the screen from my 4K screen was tough anyways.
Mm,
But so back tick opens the terminal, and
yeah.
then control one will go back to the file, and then control tilt or back tick will go back to the terminal again.
Oh,
And then I
so
think
that's why
control,
backtick doesn't always work. Because
yeah,
I would notice that sometimes I have to like mash control backtick a couple times to get the terminal to actually show. That makes a lot more sense
yeah.
now.
Yeah, so
Cool.
I just barely found that one out. Control one, and I think control one will get you like if you
Hmm.
were moving up and down with the arrow keys or whatever in the file tree, and then you hit control one, yeah, that will go back to the file
Okay.
this as well. So yeah, I just
Does
barely.
control two go to if you have? I always do like left side template, right side TypeScript. If you do control two, will that take you to the second one?
Yeah, if it's split, so I just hit control two just to see. So if it's split, then control one goes to the left half of the files, and control two goes to the right half.
I started off talking about how just go ahead and use your mouse, but now I'm going to use this all the time, dude.
Yeah, and so that's the thing for me. Like most of the time, and this is what Wes said. He's like, use your mouse, but if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over again,
Hmm.
then see if there's a shortcut for it, and then you can just hit the key and you don't have to bounce. And so that's usually what I'll do. Like
Yeah.
um, a lot of the things, like my other thing that I really like to use. You talked about the multi cursors. I love that, but then like I found myself a lot of times needing to like duplicate. Um, one line or multiple lines.
Hmm.
And so being able to duplicate the line just by either highlighting multiple or going on to a line, and I can't even remember what it is. It's
Yeah, it's like command up or down
well,
versus control up
mine
or
is,
down.
I don't know if I have mine over, and I have it set to option shift down, but I could have overwritten that. But I just like hit it, and it just I have these
Yeah.
duplicate lines instead of like, and that one's a little bit different because you could just copy and paste right there, but I like that, or moving the line up and down to a different spot with option. And so there's a lot
Yeah.
of those things that like I just over time I just learned, and
Yeah.
so now I just do them. But
Yeah. No, it's weird. Like I know the ones you're talking about, but I'm like trying to think what is the combination for that. I actually don't know in my brain because it's all here in my fingers. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
all muscle memory. So
yeah,
I
I was,
just know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I talked to my brother because he actually works with me at my job. He's a web developer too, and he like I'll tell him something. I'm like, I know there's a keyboard shortcut for it, and I use it all the time. I have no idea what it is. I have to look at the keyboard to do it
Yeah.
because I just do it. It can't. I don't really think about it. So
Yeah, yeah. The another one just came to my mind that I use all the time is uh, pruning and sorting your inputs. I think it's Option Shift O. I want
oh
to say it's
yeah,
either Option Shift O or Command Shift O. That was a life changer when I found
yeah,
that one out. I was like telling everyone I knew.
yep, yep,
Your days of manually doing that crap is over, man. Here
yep.
you go.
Yeah, and I just saw a file recently. So I was like, the only bad part about that is when I first found out, I was like, should I go through every file in my workspace and do this? And I convinced myself not to do that and to just try to remember to update them when I touch that file. But yeah, I just saw one recently. I was like, oh, I need to run that because there was a couple that like RxJS operators that we had imported and we're not using anymore. So like, I need to run that so that I can get all those ones out that we're not using anymore and stuff like that. Yeah, I love that one too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing, um, in so many ways. But yeah, let me ask you this since it came up. I feel like so I've been trying to I've been doing like a lot of live stuff, a lot of like live streaming, a lot of just conversations like this. I want to get in more into like just doing like a proper YouTube video, you know, like a 10-minute thing. Here's something cool, like kind of like a blog post almost, but as a video. I feel like you doing the recording for your courses may be very valuable experience for me, because I'm just like I use like OBS to record, but then I'm like, oh man, I messed that one bit up. Let me go back and do it, and I've got to like set everything back up again to like look the same way, and it's painful. I'm curious if you've got like a process there, like for that you use for your course or something.
Yeah. So I let's see it NgConf. I think it was 2019. I talked with Brooke Avery at the Thinkster sponsor table, and so I started working with Brooke and Joe over at Thinkster to create
Nice.
courses. So basically, the workflow that I use, I learned from Joe.
Uh-huh.
But so what I do, I use Camtasia to record for my courses, but I know a lot of people use other products. I'm blanking on the other big one that I know. I think it starts with an S, but I can't remember right now. Anyways, so I use Camtasia, and the thing that Joe recommended to me, and that I still do, is like I don't talk and type at the same time. So I'll say what I'm going to do, and then I type it, and then I talk again. And so sometimes I do have to reset, but I don't have to worry about the words necessarily
Mm-hmm.
that I said, because I introduced it and then I said it. And then
Mm-hmm.
after you are editing it, you can I'll just I leave the words saying, okay, now I'm going to do this, and then I'll speed up the typing, and so you can get that part typed out, and they can see the before and the after, but they don't have to watch me type, because even if you type quickly, nobody really wants to watch 10 seconds, or some of the things
Yeah.
are 20 seconds. They don't want to watch that. And so I'll speed that up so it's really fast typing, and then we'll look at the code. And you can you can cut parts out, or then you could move your words on top of you typing if you wanted to, so it looks like you're talking and typing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I do, and every now and then I do still have to reset. So sometimes if I can't remember what it looked like right before that, I'll have to stop the recording and go look, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll enter the command so that it looks the same, and then I'll start recording again. But yeah, that's what I do. It's been a pretty good flow for me, um, and yeah, so that's what I do. And on this last course, I wrote my first couple courses at Thinkster. I had outlines, but I didn't have like a script or anything. So I would just start talking, and I'd trip over words so much. And I'd say the same. I'd try to say
Yeah.
something, and I'd trip over it, and I couldn't get it out. So this time I wrote down like a script, and it's not word for word necessarily, but
Yeah.
it's pretty much what I want to say. And I had a lot fewer problems of needing to cut out large chunks of recording where I just was blabbering about nothing.
Yeah.
That helped. So I've kind of thought the same thing that you were talking about. I have a whole bunch of these articles that once this course is out, I've thought about going back and turning each blog post, where it makes sense at least, into a quick video and
Mm-hmm.
posting those to YouTube and linking between the blog posts, because I know some people like to learn with video and some people like to learn through text. And so I've thought about that same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of synergy there too. Like, because if you can get YouTube to the point where people are actually discovering you on YouTube, I think that's like this big engine for like pumping up everything else you could do. But
Yeah.
yeah, could I just ask? So you were talking about using Camtasia. Is that I'm not familiar with that at all. Is that a recording software, or is it editing, or is it both?
Both. So
Oh, okay.
um, it'll record. I think you can record one screen, your camera, and a microphone, and I think you can record one other thing all at the same time. But
Uh-huh.
so it'll record like my screen and microphone in 2 separate channels so that you can separate the audio and video if you need to and edit them separately, or it'll have them in the same kind of chat, well, the same track kind of, by default, but then you can separate the audio and video if you need to. And so yeah, I record and edit from Camtasia, and it works pretty well. I don't have any real big complaints with it. Every now and then, I if you use it, at least for me, like I have to save frequently because every now and then it'll just crash for no reason, like 2 or 3
Oh
times
no.
in a row. And
Yeah.
it does auto save, but you still can miss. I think I have it set to auto save like every 15 seconds, but 15 seconds can be like a decent amount if you've deleted several things or whatever. And so, so I save frequently to make sure that that doesn't happen. But for the most part, I really haven't had any real issues with it. I know other people use other tools, but that one's worked pretty well for me.
Cool. I'll have to take a look into it. I was also going to just throw out that little piece of advice that I found works really well, like for the videos I've done, which is kind of like what you were talking about. Rather than like typing out, what I'll do is I'll type out the entire file like to the endpoint, and I'll like erase one line at a time in reverse order so that I'm starting with like a blank file, and then I hit Command Z each
Oh
time
yeah.
to like undo, and that'll like slowly build out the thing. I learned that trick from Jeff Delaney, the guy who does Fireship IO, and his videos are so slick, man. They're
Yeah,
amazing.
that's a good idea too. I hadn't thought about that. That would make it
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, it's very cool because like for a long time I was like, how what's he doing there? Like, is he like some master typer I don't even know about? Because he's clearly not cutting things. Like he's going from one step to another. But yeah, it's I think it works really well. I got to figure out how to like VS Code will like highlight everything you just like dropped back in by undoing, and that's kind of like disorienting a little bit. So I think like figuring out how to like not get it so it's not highlighting the new stuff, or maybe sometimes highlighting is actually nice
Yeah.
depending on what you just added. So because it can like show you, okay, this is what just changed. But yeah,
Yeah, and you can open VS Code with I'm looking it up now, like a separate user um, directory
like
or
a separate user, like a separate settings kind
yeah,
of. That's
yep.
cool.
Let me see if I can. I'm trying to find um, my shortcut for it. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you can specify the user data directory. And so when I'm doing my videos for Thinkster, I open it with this specific user data, and so it uses a just like the standard black theme or dark theme for VS Code, and it has a few different things like a bigger font size and stuff, so that I don't have to change my normal VS Code settings for that one. So you might be able to, like, if you like the highlighting when you're working normally, then you might be able to turn that off if you wanted to,
Yeah.
just that specific user settings, and then you wouldn't have to do that.
That's an awesome tip, dude. Thanks. I had never thought of that. Like I kind of knew this stuff existed, but I was like, it was all for me. It's always like, oh man, I gotta get my Mac to not show the top bar, and I gotta remove all the different sidebars and stuff. I always take off to like focus in on the one thing. And
Yeah.
it's such a pain going from that to like actual dev work. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I've gone
But
through
yeah,
all
dude.
that. Some people
Oh,
I
sorry.
know, some people I know, they create like an entire user on their Mac that is just for like their recording, and so
That's
then
brilliant.
it's like really locked down. And I haven't been able to get myself to go that far because I don't want to. There's a lot of things that I do have set up that I don't want to reset up on the other user, but it's mostly just me being kind of lazy and not wanting to do that. But I think that it would be nice. So I've been tempted to do it. I just haven't done it yet. But
Yeah, I don't know, man. I always get weird about that. I would just worry about like because it like partitions the disk at that point, right? I just that just makes me nervous every time. But yeah. We talked about all these things. We're almost out of time. Do you have a hard stop coming up here?
no, not really.
Okay.
I could go a few more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I did want to talk about Deno a little bit. Like we were talking about the course a little bit at the start, but I'm curious. What attracted you to Deno? How'd you get into it? What do you like about it? Maybe what don't you like about it? That may be the big thing. Right now, it seems so bright and shiny to me. I can't think of any downside, but I'm curious if you've encountered any.
Yeah, so I was just talking about it with my boss at work. He had mentioned it, and I had heard about it, and and so I just kind of started digging into it and playing with it, and thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Like this would be a good idea for a course, and so I started doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first thing I should say though is in the course. So the first time I heard about Dino, I heard it like it was people were saying Deno. So I say Deno throughout the course because I can't turn it off in my.
Oh
So,
no,
but
dude!
that
For the longest time, I thought the logo was a sock puppet.
oh,
I had the same kind of like disconnect.
I can't undo it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
say Deno throughout the course. But so for those of you who watch it, that's just be aware of that. But so what I really like about it is there's a few parts. One is that you have such easy fine grained control over what your scripts or your applications can access.
Mm,
Because if you want file system access, you have to provide the flag for that. If you want network access, you have to provide the flag for that. And so I'm not in that. Like, I don't really. This is probably kind of bad for me, but I don't really like look that hard into a lot of the scripts that I download or packages I install from
yeah.
NPM. Like, if they have a lot of downloads and stuff, like I just kind of take that to mean, well, these 200,000 other people haven't had an issue, so I'm probably fine.
Yeah.
Um, but the fact that like if I download a module to, I don't know what you would do to create um, unique identifiers, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that it doesn't need file system access or network access to do that. And I run my program, and then it tells me it can't run because the one script is asking for network access. Then I know that that's a red flag that
Yeah.
I can look into that some more and get rid of that script for a different one. So I really
Yeah.
like that about it. Um, I like
Can I ask you something about that
yeah.
aspect of it? Because so this is the thought I've had around this a lot, which was like, so I know you can restrict to certain access, like network access is the big one maybe, but just like thinking in terms of like a decently sized app, of course you must be making network connections. Is there is it still safe like because it seems to me like it's like there's a flag that boolean network connections yes or no, and if that's yes, like most apps I imagine would be, you've got the same problem, right? Or
Yeah, so you can approve just certain URLs or certain domains. So
oh, okay.
you can do all network access, but you could also just say allow network access to this URL. And so then
Interesting.
if it's outside of that, then it
Yeah.
would still fail. So you can get pretty fine grained control over that. You can also just provide a flag, allow all, and it just allows everything. And then it's just
Now we're in node mode, right?
yeah, then it's the same node, and
Yep.
which especially when if you're just testing something out, that might be fine, and then you don't have to remember those. But yeah, you can get pretty fine grained control. Same thing with file system access. You can tell it
Mm.
a folder or a file that it has access to, but that it doesn't have access to your entire file system. So yeah, you can set just a Boolean flag, but you can also um, specify a little bit more too.
That makes much more sense.
Yeah,
Because I was like, that doesn't sound all that secure to
yeah,
me. But yeah, it's cool that you can actually like restrict to certain URLs. I thought maybe like it was you'd restrict it to ports. But yeah, if you can do it to the URL level, feel like that assuages any kind of fears I would have had about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool about it. I guess actually the first the part that I actually think is the most cool about it is that you can just write TypeScript and run it.
Oh,
And
that dude, the little bit I've touched, and I want to. This is whole thing I could get into about how I'm like trying to focus on one thing at a time.
yeah,
So I haven't been getting into Deno yet. But the little bit I touched it before I decided to make myself more disciplined. The coolest thing was clicking through to an import and seeing native TypeScript code.
yeah,
That was like so cool.
yeah, it's
But
so cool. Like I was going to do something the other day. I needed to test something out. I can't remember, but I was like, I really want to do this in TypeScript, but I didn't have. It's on my work computer. I haven't installed Deno or anything like that, and I didn't feel like I didn't have the time to do it at the time. So I was like, oh, this is kind of a pain. But like, there's like a whole setup to get to use TypeScript with Node, and you have to have all the build steps. But like with Deno, you just make a TypeScript file and you run it, and it just works. And
yeah, there's no transpile step. You're
yeah,
just shipping.
yep.
Well, shipping, but you're sending out TypeScript code.
Yeah,
That's
and
so cool.
you can bundle them. You can bundle code together really easily if you if you have 3 or 4 files. So in the course, one of the examples is we have a math file that we're writing, but we have the addition function in its own script and the subtraction function in its own script, and they're both imported into the math script. And you can bundle it and tell it to bundle the math script, and it will take what it needs from all 3 files and create an output. But you can also just, you can just ship a TypeScript file. You could have TypeScript in your GitHub repo or a gist or wherever you want, and you just import it through the URL and you just
Oh,
use it.
dude, you could just have a gist, and that could be your registry right
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
That's so cool.
You could just have it in a gist and import it from the gist. And if you liked JavaScript but I liked TypeScript, then or vice versa, and like you could import a JavaScript file into your TypeScript file and it would just work, and vice versa. And so I really like that. Like there's so much less of a barrier to entry with it than
Yeah.
there is in Node right now. Like if we're being 100% honest, as much as I like TypeScript, I don't have any idea how to set up a TypeScript project just in
From
Node,
scratch.
from scratch. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't do that. And so that's one of the things I like is just write a file, write it in TypeScript, use Deno
Yeah.
and run it, and it's just done. And so that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, here's the one thing I foresee being like kind of a friction point with Deno. And that's it's like an analogy. So I'm in Arizona, and we do weird stuff around the time zone. But it's really not that weird. We just don't change for daylight savings time.
Mhm.
And the whole point of that is to make things like more sane for ourselves. And it's like objectively better if you think about it that way. But given that the rest of the world is not sane, it actually makes things like an order of magnitude worse. Like, because I've got to think now, okay, that meeting like on that week, that meeting that we used to have at 10, was that scheduled in Mountain Time? Was that scheduled in Arizona time? Was that scheduled in Eastern time? And like I can't even follow it. But it's like the same thing with Deno. I feel like there's this whole talk about getting RxJS into Deno because people want to use it. And it's like, oh man, like it shouldn't be this hard. Like they're using TypeScript source code, but if you actually want to have like that bundle, the same bundle that everyone else is using in TypeScript, it's kind of a pain in the butt to
Yeah.
get it over. And it should be. It should just be take that source code, throw it over. But yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know all the inner workings from that side of it. I know that there's a lot of talk about that there's like some really popular packages in Node and stuff like that that people want to be able to use, and that it's kind of difficult. I know I just listened to the Syntax FM episode this week was a big show about Deno, and they talk a little bit about that. That'd be a good one to listen. Wes and Scott talk a lot about that. But yeah, I think some of those friction points, I think they'll be solved at least to a certain degree. But But a lot of there's a lot of good things that even if Deno doesn't become huge, if it pushes Node forward too, I think that could do like some really good as well. So an example on my personal site, I hosted on Netlify, and I have a few Netlify functions that I run to get some data that I want to show on the site.
Yeah.
And I recently was having I was using the node request or no, yeah, it was request, and then request got um, deprecated, and so I was using node fetch or something like that to get this data. And on some of them it worked, and on some of them it just wasn't working, and I could not figure out what was going on. And I had to figure out how to just use the native HTTPS module to make a request, and it was really hard. In Deno, you can just use the browser fetch API, and it's so easy just to write a fetch request to get data. And I feel like it should be that easy in Node, because that's like a common thing, is making network requests to get data from other APIs and stuff in Node. And it's not really that easy. Like there's difficulty there. And so my hope is that at the very least, some of the things that Deno does, the Node community looks at and says, okay, that's a really good idea. How can we make this easier? And then especially for a web developer like myself, like I'm very familiar with web APIs, and Deno uses all web APIs, and so it's the same going back and forth. And so that's, I think, some of the good parts that will come out of it is that is hopefully it pushes Node forward, and then it makes people, it's so much easier when you're not switching context all the time. You can write code the same in both spots. It's really nice. So those are some of the things that I like about Deno. I still think it's fun to kind of dip your toes into now and to get used to it. I still think it's a little bit of ways away, for at least for me, for like really running a big project on it, because it is new and there's things that are changing still on it pretty frequently. But I think there's some pretty cool stuff that could come from it. At the very least, what it should be at least pretty good for now is like you could replace Bash scripts with Deno scripts, and it's much easier to write JavaScript for me than it is Bash. And so at the very least, I think I could start using it for stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of good from it, but it is still very early. And so it may not be the right time to try and write a production application with it, but I think there's some pretty cool stuff that they're pushing.
Yeah. I if I had more time and more control, I think I'd love to get into that kind of stuff, because it's just I don't know. I started my career about 6 years ago, and you kind of heard about this golden age of like npm and Node just getting started, and man, it must have been a really cool ride to be on that train. And I imagine that's kind of what's happening right now over in Deno land. And I kind of want to get into it, but for now, I'm content cheering from the sidelines. Looking forward to getting my hands on it when I can. So
yeah, for sure.
And your course, bringing things around full circle. Your course, getting started with Deno, sounds like a cool way to get a quick introduction into it. So
yeah,
we'll be looking forward to checking it out.
Course. It's just a little over an hour, so it shouldn't take too much time for anyone to go through the course. And just kind of get your feet wet and learn about some of the ins and outs of it and start to get familiar with using it. And so I'm excited about it.
Awesome, dude. Well, yeah. Preston, man, thanks so much for hanging out and talking about stuff, and for your Deno course, and for all the blogs and the NgChampions stuff you've been doing. It's awesome to see all that stuff coming out, and I think we're building a really cool community. And thanks so much for everything you've done for all that stuff, man.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me on and inviting me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Of course, man. Well, sweet. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.